All right, moving on to troublesome language. Let's talk about misunderstandings, things that can cause people not to quite make sense of what you said. The first one is equivocal misunderstandings. It's that there's more than one meaning in the words or the statement that you made. For example, I'll knock you up in the morning. Okay, no, I'm not talking about getting you pregnant. I'm saying that I'm going to wake you up in the morning because that's in Great Britain. That's what that means. There's a lot of examples of this, but we'll move on now to relative words. And those are those non-specific, generally random words that we'll say like soon, near, over yonder. Had a guy that I used to work at a sawmill, and he drove, an old guy, been there forever, and drove the forklift. And you would ask him a question like, where are the 2x4s at, Howard? Or where are these at, Howard? And he would sit there with his hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead at what he was doing, never move, make any other nonverbal communications, and say, over yonder. Everything you asked him was over yonder. There was no idea where that would necessarily be. So it must have been over dirt. And then we've got the soon or near or slow or in a minute. If you ask someone, how much longer till you're ready? And they say in a minute, that could be 5 minutes. That could be 2 hours. If you ask your best friend, where are you at? Because they're coming to your house and says, I'll be there in just a few. Probably translates, I haven't even got out of bed yet. So it's the idea of relative words. They're not specific. They don't tell you exactly what you're doing. And then we move on to slang or jargon. We've got a lot of different situations. We've got they're specific to a culture. Like you got sweat equity or perp for perpetrator. Oscar Mike means on mission. Left wing is liberals. Right wing are conservatives. BTWs, by the way. WTF is, well, that's fun. Okay. And K is low key F off. Or potassium, depending on who you're talking to. So these are misunderstandings. And then we move into disruptive languages. And specifically, we're going to talk about facts versus opinions. An opinion is something that you generate that may or may not be based in fact, but it is your own thought process. It has nothing to do with very specifics. For example, the climate in Portland is better than in Seattle. Maybe you think it is, although there's a whole song about the bluest skies are in Seattle. But they are saying that it rains more in Seattle than in Portland. That's a fact. Saying that the climate is better is relevant because it's an opinion, because maybe somebody really likes the rain. Saying that Kareem is the greatest basketball player of all in history. Most of you are going to say, no, it was Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or Michael Jordan. But the fact of the matter is, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the all-time leading scorer in the NBA. So, does that make him the greatest? I don't know. That's an opinion. And then, of course, you have the United States, the model is the best model of economic success in the world. That's kind of a real stretch, but you can look and say per capita income in the United States is higher than in several other countries. So facts and opinions can be easily misconstrued. And we see this a lot on the news, especially with the 24-hour news feed now. We see a lot of opinion that is presented as facts. So idea is that creates confusion and issues. And the next one is the idea of facts versus inferences. We can have this fact, right? We can have this very specific thing that is true, and then we can try to infer what happened. For example, a car crash where a guy hit a lamppost driving down the street. Maybe he was playing Pokemon Go. Maybe he was texting. Maybe he was talking to a friend or whatever. He was distracted, drove in. Maybe he hit black ice. We don't know, but we can infer what we want. Ask my wife. Every inference for somebody driving slow, not taking off the light fast enough, weaving, or anything else is texting. If you interrupt me before I finish what I'm saying, I might infer from that you don't care about what I'm saying. But in fact, maybe it is that there's something that came into your head really quick and you needed to say it because you knew you would forget it and it was something that needed to be said and we can move on. And then we've got the idea of you're not paying your rent in time, and I can infer from that you're just trying to weasel out of your responsibilities when maybe you just got issues going on at the time. So let's move on to emotive language. Emotive language is those languages carries emotion that can change the feel of the sentence, even though it doesn't explicitly change the meaning of the sentence. For example, you could have someone say, the senator explained that he was out of the country when you ask where they were at. Or the senator claimed that he was out of the country. He explained and he claimed, but the claimed definitely carries the idea that maybe he wasn't out of the country. Maybe he was down at his, yeah, that thing. He was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing and he claimed he was out of the country. All right. Now here's something we'll see a lot in the news feeds, and So one source may come up and say, Mr. Smith was attacked by Mr. Jones for 2 minutes. Okay, that's what happened. But then you've got that 24-hour news feed, so we got to make it more interesting. And then we get, for what seemed like a lifetime, Mr. Smith was subjected to a vicious, cowardly assault by the unemployed, steroid-pumped monster. All right. So as we're seeing that, you can see that there's a lot of inferred information, and it really carried a lot of emotion. It really tried to convey something more than just the news, just the facts. So as we're moving on, we're going to look at the idea of evasive language. And the whole idea are euphemisms, and those things that sound different or sound whatever. So while we're looking at euphemisms, typically I'd run the George Carlin video. It's a bit long of a video. If you want to look it up, you can look up George Carlin euphemisms. But euphemisms are the idea of things that are very vague or very covering of what you're actually trying to say. For example, he died yesterday. Died is very direct. So what do we say? He passed on. He's gone home. He's moved on to a better place. You know, we use these things for stuff that we find either very uncomfortable or taboo or something, whether it's death, sex, any of that. We have all these different terms for the same thing that make it softer or easier for us to understand. But because of that, it can be very confusing. The death one, for example. There's a radio station in Morristown that every day at 10 o'clock they read the obituaries. And if you just tune in and you're not aware that that's what they're going, and you'll hear, Mr. Smith went home on Saturday. And I'm like, why do I care he went home on Saturday? Does he not go home every Saturday? Do you see? So you can easily get confusion because what you choose for a euphemism may not actually be what the other person would recognize as that. I've got a friend that actually uses the term frickle frackle. Yeah, frickle frackle. For sex. The person, they frickle frackle. So it's a euphemism. But if you just heard it, you probably wouldn't know what they were talking about. The next one is equivocation. It's that vague statement. It's that vague idea of what's going on or that it could be misinterpreted. For like this one. Oh, I love it when it does that thing. So it's like this video here that will play eventually. I would think it would play eventually. Apparently it's not going to play, so we're not going to worry about it. But the reality of it is that it's that vague statement, like making something like that particular one was talking about the old bag, and then they're getting the bags, which is a bad slang for women. But he made a comment about, if you need help with them, I'll take the blonde, you take the one in the turban, or whatever. So